I just got this camcorder on sale at Best Buy for $129.99. I wouldn't have gotten this camcorder if it wasn't so cheap, because three features that are very important for me in a camcorder are a built-in LED light, an external microphone jack, and a headphone jack, and this has none of them. But I couldn't pass up the bargain price, so I'll see if it's any good. We get our warranty card. We get 15% off of eligible accessories. We get more 15% off accessories. We get our operating guide for various different models there. We get the same thing in Spanish. Then inside we get the USB cable extension, because this has a built-in USB cable attached to the hand strap. We get an HDMI cable, which is a nice touch because a lot of camcorders don't come with that. We get the battery. It's the FV30 battery, so it's pretty low capacity. Interestingly, it looks like we do not get an AC adapter for this, so I guess they intend for you to charge it only through the USB cable. Also, it does not come with a composite video output cable, so I don't know if it even supports that. So that's it. No AC adapter in this thing. It does have a DC input jack, so you can purchase a real AC adapter if you want to. And there's some kind of new connection here I haven't seen before on Sony camcorders. It just says multi. I had to look it up in the manual, but that multi output jack supports an AV cable for composite video and stereo audio, but of course you have to buy that cable separately. The multi-jack also supports a special USB cable designed for connecting to an external hard drive if you want to copy your videos over to an external hard drive without using a computer. The manual also makes it clear that on this model the steady shot is only electronic, while on the fancier CX220 model is optical steady shot. And this definitely is lighter and cheaper feeling than my Sony DCR-SX220 standard definition camcorder. So I'm a little bit disappointed. Granted, I paid a very low price for it, but it definitely feels cheaper and lighter than I would expect a Handycam to be. On the front we get our stereo microphone and the lens with a manual lens shutter on it. It's a wide-angle Carl Zeiss lens with 32 times extended zoom. On the top is the typical zoom control and photo button. On the back is the battery slot and the recording button. And on this side, it's a very cheap feeling hand strap with the built-in USB cable, and like I showed you is those jacks for the DC input and the AV output. On the bottom is the tripod mount and the slot for the SD card or memory stick. This model does not have any built-in memory. When we open up the LCD on the inside of the camcorder, we don't see any buttons there at all, just a little tiny built-in speaker and the HDMI output. And the LCD is not touchscreen. You get a little joystick and a playback button, and that's it. I also realized that the box does not include any software CD. Instead, the camera itself says to go to Sony's website to download the software. If you compare the hand strap on the SX220 to the CX220, it definitely has gotten smaller. Also, they now use this cheap kind of harsh grained plastic where it used to have smooth plastic. And they reduced the amount of chrome finish on top around the buttons and the lens. Now it's just all black plastic, or you can get these in different colors too. And on the front there is no more lens thread. This one got a 37mm lens thread, but this one clearly does not. And of course this one is now manual shutter, while this one is automatic. They also got rid of the stickers. So no more stickers that some people complain about. And there's no more status LEDs on the back. So the signs of cost cutting with this model are very obvious, but one thing that has been improved is the menu system, which is now easier to use with the joystick, because the previous models had a menu system that was optimized for touchscreens, so when you were using with the joystick it was very clumsy to navigate around. But this one is definitely easier to get through. You also get some new options in terms of the recording format. You can choose either interlaced or progressive for the AVC HD, and you can also choose MP4 format for smaller HD files, and also standard definition which I believe should still be MPEG 2. And in the AVC HD mode, you get a choice of bit rates. The highest is 24 megabits, the high quality is 17 megabits, standard is 9 megabits, and long time recording is 5 megabits. I had to look this up online because Sony doesn't mention it in their specifications anywhere, but MP4 mode is actually 720p. That's 1280 by 720, and you do not get a choice of bitrate. And if you want to, you could still do standard definition recording in 4:3 aspect ratio. And you can see by the preview that it is a true widescreen because it adds extra width to the sides instead of just cutting off the top and bottom. Another thing with this menu system is that when you hit the menu, you don't get those presets that you can change like the old system that Sony used. What they give you instead are these presets down the side here. Now it comes from the factory with a couple of these set to different settings, but you can change these to whatever you want. But it's not really that convenient because, like, let's say I turn on the low lux mode here and then hit OK. See, it goes back up to the menu, so if I want to turn it off again, I have to arrow down to it again. It's not going to stay on it. Like the joystick button of the Canon I'm using now, if you set it to one thing, it stays on that thing until you change it. But this one, it always goes back to the top button, which is the menu. It's not really as convenient as it could be if they made it stay on one thing until you change it. And here's one thing that confused me until I figured it out. If you go to change the frame rate, let's say I want to change it to 60p, and then I hit the X here, and you notice it still says 60i. That's because what you have to do, see this tiny little next in the corner? You have to go down there instead of hitting the X up here to get the setting to take. So you hit next, and it pops up this warning saying that you can't take still images while recording video in the progressive mode. Now finally, what you have to do on this screen is you have to go down here and hit OK. And then finally, it accepted the setting. It's not really that good of a menu system here. While editing this video, I also discovered that iMovie 11 does not support the progressive AVC HD files recorded by this camcorder. You can see the two clips I recorded in the interlaced mode show up just fine, but all the ones I recorded in the 60p mode just show up as blank and I can't click on them. So I'll need to find alternate means to edit this video to get all these clips included. That's about it for the design and controls of the Sony HDR-CX220, so now let's take a look at some test footage. I will also be including some comparisons between the Sony and the Kodak ZI-12 using a $5 counterfeit Sony external microphone from eBay. But it just so happens that I paid the same exact price for these two cameras. They both cost me $129.99. That was the normal price for the Kodak, and that was the sale price for the Sony. I'm now using the Sony HDR-CX220, and the solution I found for editing progressive AVC HD video on my Mac is a program called clipwrap, which takes the MTS files recorded by the camcorder and converts them into QuickTime MOV files without re-encoding the video, so there's no loss of quality. And then you can take those MOV files and drag and drop them into iMovie, and they'll work just fine. The only downside is that the free trial version of clipwrap is limited to 1 minute per video, but that's not really a problem in this case because most of my test clips were under 1 minute anyway. So here's the test footage I recorded with the Sony HDR-CX220. Come on, stupid birds, do something. You won't see any flowers out here in December, but you'll see this inside. She's looking inside because she knows that's where the food comes from. Okay, that last shot was a standard steady shot, and I noticed it was still kind of shaking around, so now I turned on active steady shot. and it definitely appears to be doing a better job. This is a pretty decent camera for taking video, at least in good lighting, but I tried taking some still photos of this thing and they look like garbage. And that's not even the highly interpolated photos it can take. I mean, it claims 8.9 megapixels, but it's actually a 2.4 megapixel image sensor. So I put it on 2 megapixel and I took some photos, and you know, when you scale it down to like a little 3x5 photo or something like that, it looks okay, but when you view it full screen, it looks terrible. I mean, it's all grainy, and you can see all this digital noise on the picture, like digital compression artifacts, even though it's not a small file, and it looks terrible. But for video, at least, it seems okay in good lighting. I noticed a lot of graininess in low light. This would be considered low light indoor scene. It's actually looking brighter on the LCD than it does in real life, which means it's really boosting the gain. And especially right there on the LCD, I don't know if it'll come through after YouTube's video compression gets through with it, but I can see a lot of graininess in this shot right here. It looks like the colors are pretty good in medium lighting. But when I zoom in on the red here, it becomes very grainy. So the low light sensitivity of this camera is actually surprisingly good, including the color reproduction in low light. But the price you pay for that is all the graininess you get. And the colors are coming through strong, but not necessarily the most accurate in low light. Because at least on the LCD, what I see here, it's making the red on these light bulb boxes look more like pink. And just for comparison, this is my Kodak ZI-12 camera, also recording in 1080p 60 frames per second with a Sony clone external stereo microphone in the same lighting conditions, and the graininess is still visible, but it's not nearly as bad as the Sony. I think it's doing a better job in this low lighting, at least in terms of the graininess. Maybe it's not boosting the brightness as much as the Sony would, but on the other hand, it's not making it so grainy either. And also the red on these boxes actually looks red instead of pink like it did on the Sony's LCD. But again, that was just on the LCD. I have to review the footage on the computer to see what it actually looks like, because the colors on the LCD are not always the most accurate compared to what it's actually recording. Like pretty much all of Sony's current high-definition camcorders, this one has a wide-angle lens, which is normally great because it gives you a wider field of view, and you don't have to step back as much to get everything you want to include in a shot. But when you get up close to something, you can see the distortion of the lens causes straight lines to look curved, like these two audio components here. They're not curved out like this, that's just the lens making it look like that when you get up close to something. And the Kodak has a wide angle lens just like the Sony, but it's not quite as wide angle as the Sony is. So you do not get that fishbowl effect, or at least not nearly as bad. It looks like the lines on these things are still staying quite straight. I mean, you can see a little bit of a curve there, but it's definitely not as bad as the Sony was in this same scene here. Well, the sign is warning me to keep my radio volume low, but nonetheless, I'll do a quick video of an audio quality test here.
On 107.1 FM, Pork Roll and Eggs in the morning, and commercial free at 9 and 3. It's the neighborhood.
All I am is a man. I want the world.
There's the radio station that used to be The Breeze, and then they got rid of that name and they changed it to just 107.1 FM. And they just fired the guy who made that decision to get rid of the name The Breeze, so hopefully they'll make some changes in the near future.
This holiday season, do yourself a great favor. If you're not speaking to a loved one, pick up the phone. Say you're sorry. I promise a great burden will be lifted, and you will enjoy God's peace. A message from the law firm of Levinson, Axelrod.
Yeah, if picking up the phone and saying you're sorry is not good enough, call a law firm and ask them to help. It's a cloudy December morning, so don't expect much in the way of bright colors in this test footage. This should be a good test of the steady shot. So I'm holding the camera in my hand as I'm driving. And I noticed that after I bought this camcorder on Cyber Monday, the so-called day when there's a lot of online sales, the Monday after Thanksgiving here in the US, the price went up from $129.99 to $179.99. So in this review I really have to gauge whether this camcorder is worth 50 bucks more than I paid for it. I mean, it's one thing to say it's worth the money I paid, but I also have to say whether it's worth 50 more bucks to anyone else who's trying to buy this and isn't able to get that good deal on it that I did. Here's a quick zoom test. 30 times extended optical zoom, and that's it, 30 times. In order to get the 30 times extended zoom, you have to turn off active steady shot and just use regular steady shot. Another idiot ahead of me driving with no lights on when it's getting dark out. I don't think that car even has daytime running lights.
Standing there with the train rumbling past, it's hard not to think of this as a pipeline on wheels. And the railroads, they love it.
Over the course of the last almost 4 years, you've seen just a rapid development, which attests to the demand for the oil.
That's John Miller. He's Vice President of Industrial Sales for Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. He says railroads are in a good position with tracks by all the major oil fields. And their main competition, pipelines, will take a long time to build.
I just noticed that in the 1080 progressive mode, you can only use the highest bit rate, which is 28 megabits. If you want to use lower bit rates, such as if you're going to directly upload the file to YouTube and you don't want it to take forever, you have to use the interlaced mode, which then gives you quality settings ranging from, I think, 24 down to like 5 megabits. There's quite a variety of different settings there that you only get in the 60i interlaced mode, not in the progressive mode. But to keep my video editing much easier, I will not be using any of the interlaced modes in this test. People have been saying we should get rid of the penny for decades now, but here are some new 2013 pennies. Nice and shiny. I don't like what they put on the back of the new ones though. They should have kept the Lincoln Memorial on there. Here's my 2011 Mazda 2 at almost 50,000 miles. It's like 49,374 right now. Just happened to see this office building with the Mazda logo on it. Not sure what kind of offices they have in there. Thought it was a good spot to take a quick video of the car using the Sony. Here's the sign. It's Mazda Training, whatever that means. So that's my review of the Sony Handycam HDR-CX220. I really can't complain for the price I paid. This is probably the cheapest Handycam that Sony has ever sold. I don't think even a refurbished one has ever been as low as that. But like I said, of course, the price has since gone up. And that makes it a little more difficult to recommend because there are a couple other competitors in the price range that this is now selling at. There's the Panasonic HC V110, I believe. I know they had the V100 before it, but I think now it's the V110 is the current model by them. And JVC has a couple low-end camcorders, although those only have a mono microphone, which is really cheap. And Samsung has their F90, which I did a test video of in the Best Buy store, and I really cannot recommend that one because it has very slow autofocus, and as typical for Samsung, the microphone sounds terrible. The signs of cost cutting are very obvious on this model. When I first got it and saw that there's no AC adapter, I thought that was just because of the low price I paid. You would expect them to cut corners somewhere to be able to sell it at that price. But then I saw a review of someone who paid full price for this when it first came out. I think the original list price was like $249.99, and the guy did a review video of one that he paid that much for. And even at full list price, this model did not come with an AC adapter, so that's just really cheap on Sony's behalf. You'd think if you were paying $250 for a camera, at least they could throw in a $5 AC adapter. So whether or not I recommend this camera really depends on how good of a price you can get it at. If you find it at $129.99 again for a brand new one, I mean it's sealed in the original Sony box and everything, definitely a good buy. But if you're paying $180 for it, then you really should look at your other options, or maybe just save up another $50 and get something better. And if you don't need to get one that's absolutely brand new, you can look for a pre-owned Canon camcorder, which will give you an external microphone jack, which I consider to be a very important feature to have.